Hello and welcome back, guys. I hope you guys had a lovely, quick, short, stunning break because in our last few minutes, we're going to answer any questions that you guys may have. And I hope that on the page that I have open right here, you guys have spread in all of your questions and asked and clarified anything that you need to know because in this last session, we are for you. We are all for you. Hey, Haley.
Absolutely, we are. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of jump a few things, so you're going to have to forgive me for this. So, the learners calculated their total expenses. We've done that. Right. It says use the table to draw a straight line on the grid provided. So, I'm going to discuss it briefly, and I hope I can find the grid. Okay, I don't know where the grid is. No. I'm briefly just discussing it, and then I'll come back to the grid, is what we had in this case is we had at 0 pence, they still had a fixed cost of 40. So remember your graph has to start at 40 Rand, and then it should be a straight line because it's a constant increase of 2 Rand per pen. So just bear that in mind. We'll try to get to the graph later, but otherwise we'll do graphs when we do graphs. Right. So now the learners decided to sell the pens at 6 Rand each. Calculate the values of C and D using the information given in the table below and show all your calculations. Now in this case, this is their income. The number of pens they sold. If they sold 0 pens, they've got no money. And if they sold 2 pens, it's 12 Rand. So let's work out C, because C, they sold 5 pens and we sold them at 6 Rand each. So we end up with an answer of 30 Rand. And we can write that in there. Okay. And finally, D, we're working backwards, but this is a whole lot easier than the one where we had our fixed cost, because D, we know that they had 90 Rand, and that was 6 Rand times the number of pens. So in this case, we're again going to do the opposite of what we did. So we're going to take our 90 Rand and divide by 6 Rand to get how many pens we sold. And that is 90 divided by 6. I'll do this on the calculator. Right, is 15 pens. So they sold 15 pens. And we can type that in there. 15 pens. Right. Now, if you're doing this on a graph, which I think is the next page, we're going to start at 0. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to actually see what our graph is. So our income started at 40 and our expenses started at 40 and our income started at 0. And just follow the lines of the table to draw the graph. I'm going to leave out the graph for a moment because I want to see if we can answer these questions without the graph. So suppose that the learners bought 25 pens. Use the tables to answer the following questions. What were their total expenses? So you go back to our table of expenses. I'm going to have to find that. Back to our table of expenses. Maybe we'll do this calculation. They bought 25 pen. Their expenses is 90 Rand. Now I'm going to have to try find my space again. Done that calculation. There's the graph. Okay, so they bought 25 fed. What was their total expenses? And that was 90 Rand. What was their income if exactly 25 pens had been sold? Now, rather than going backwards, I'm actually going to do this calculation quickly for you. So let's do this calculation because we know that they had 25 pens at 6 Rand a pen is 150 Rand. So their total income was 150 Rand. It will be a whole lot easier for you because you're actually just going to be reading that value off the table. It was given to you. So their total income was that. Write down the ratio of the total expenses to the income. Now remember, whenever you're writing a ratio, it needs to be in the exact same order as the words. So we're looking at our total expenses to income. So I'm going to write it as expense to income. And my expenses were 90 Rand. And my income was 150 Rand. Now, they didn't say anything about simplifying this. They just said write the ratio as one to the other. So I've done that, and therefore, I've answered the question. Let's move to the next part of the question. Now it says, use the graph. Now we're going to use the table to calculate the profit they make if they buy 25 pens and only sell 20. So they buy 25 pens. Let's quickly do this calculation. They're going to pay 40 Rand for their fixed cost, plus it was 2 Rand a pen times 25. Okay, well, we've actually got that number. That's 90. And now they sell 20. So they're taking their 6 Rand times by 20 pens, and we see that that's 120 Rand. Now we want to know the profit. So how much profit do they have? The profit is the amount of money that they get in minus the expenses that it cost them. So they get in 120 Rand and it costs them 90 Rand. So the balance of that 30 Rand, is profit. So there we have the profit that they make. So if they buy 25 pence, they only sell 20. And I think that might take us to the next question. If I've got time to do part of the next question.
Yes,
I know we're doing finance for a few weeks, so I'm going to get to this. We'll pick up where I leave off today. And I'm going to start this question. Question 4 says, a group of colleagues work at the same company. They want to organize a carpool so they can travel together to help reduce the traffic congestion on the road. The estimated cost per person is shown in the graph below. So again, let's look at a graph, let's analyze our graph, and let's see what it means. So we've got our estimated monthly travel costs. That's the cost per person. And here we have the number of people in the car. So 1 person, there's our cost, and 2 people, etc., etc. So let's go see if we can answer some of these questions. Now, what I want to point out before I go answer the questions, and I can't remember if I've left this question in here, but why is it a broken line graph? Why is it not a solid line? So the reason it's a broken line graph is that the number of people is a definite number. It is not a continuous number. It's a very discrete number. We can have 1 person in the car or 2 people in the car, but we can never have 1.5 people in the car. And when we have a straight line graph, we should be able to read a value in between. So can't have 1.5 people. So let's go and answer some of the questions. What was the monthly transport cost if there was 1 person in the car? Let's go back to our table. There's 1 person in the car, our costs, and we read off there was 250 Rand. How's our time there, Kat?
We have a few minutes.
A few minutes. So I've got 250 Rand. Let's try to see if we can answer the next one. How much would each person pay per month if there were 2 people in the car? Well, let's go back to our table. Now we're looking for 2 people. So again, I'm going to draw my line. Right, from 2 people up to my graph and across. A little bit low. Okay, it is, I'm trying to move that a little bit. There you go. It is between 120 and 130. So what is between? 125. It's on the line, so we can go 125. R125, and that's per person. If each person pays 50 Rand per month, how many people are there in the car? Now we're going and we're reading this, and I think after this we can probably call it a day. So 50 Rand, we found 50 Rand on our graph. Let's use that, a lot easier. 50 Rand, we draw a line across to our graph, and from that we draw a line going down, again a little bit crooked. Okay, and you can see that it's 5 people. So, yeah, getting confused here. So how much does it cost? It costs us 50 Rand. It was for 5 people. And I think at this point, I'm probably going to have to end off, and we will pick it up again from this point next week. Remember, we're going to be carrying on with finance. We're going to be looking at bank statements, and we're going to be looking at a whole lot of wonderful things. So tune in, and Kat, over
Thank
to
you,
you.
Haley.
Bye.
Thank you. So you guys must make sure that you do tune in to Learn Extra next week, Thursday, just so that you guys can hear the continuation of this finance section. Guys, it's been an awesome show. Thank you so much for joining us. I love being here and I love having you guys here because it just makes maths literacy and every other subject so much easier. From me and Haley, bye-bye.